Hey guys, Shane here, and today I'm with Dorian and Keegan, and I'm with Chris from BrightFire Stove, and he's got another cool introduction, I would say, to BrightFire, a new stove, smaller, and I'm gonna kind of let him talk about that a little bit. We're gonna be out here camping, we're gonna do some fishing, but I want him to talk about his stove just a little bit before we go anywhere.
Yeah, so we wanted to take all the good things about our bigger stove, and a lot of people asked for something smaller and lighter. But I also had some ideas how to increase the functionality. So this camper stove, or excuse me, the Escape is what we call the stove. It actually does some things that the bigger stove doesn't do, which I think you're going to think is going to be kind of cool. But it assembles essentially the same way. We have a floor plan, fire pan, drops in. And the stove we're working on has got 73 fires on it.
73 burns on this stove.
On this stove, yeah. And no damage, no nothing.
You guys have seen me use the larger version, or the granddaddy of this stove, which is the original version, and it is a beast. I put it together wrong the first time I used it, and it was my own fault, but look at this thing. Now, I haven't seen this together in person yet. This is I've seen pictures, and I got to see some pregnancy photos of it being created. So this is really interesting. And this is stove number one, right?
This is stove number one.
This is stove number one.
Escape, yeah. And when it's together, you can actually pick it up.
Yeah.
Front or back. You can't do it by the sides.
Yeah. How much does it weigh?
4 pounds.
4 pounds. So a lot of you guys are gonna say that's kind of heavy for a stove, but is it really though? I mean, what would your argument be if somebody said, hey, this is kind of heavy for a stove?
It's kind of heavy for a stove, but the opportunities of what it can do for a stove and the cook set that comes with it that we're going to show you is going to offset some other carry weight you're going to do. And the efficiency of this stove is going to offset what you normally would use for wood. This is an extremely efficient stove, and we're going to show you that. But the big thing on the weight is it's going to last forever. This is made out of a special grade of stainless steel. I'm not aware of any other outdoor stove that's made out of the stainless steel, honestly. And if somebody tried to order this steel on their own, they would have a hard time doing it because it's super expensive and hard to find. It's basically stainless steel that's built for blast furnace and nuclear cooling stations. That's what this stainless steel is from. It is a pretty exotic grade of stainless steel, but you need it for the heat. This stove gets 1550 degrees inside.
1550 degrees?
Inside of it. Up here it's 900. And then we're going to show you how we actually utilize that heat from, again, not a lot of wood. Shane's holding a couple of accessories that are kind of new that are going to be really interesting. One of the nice things about this stove, and different than the other one, is that the other one, you may recall, was largely for pellets. You could use wood on it. This one is biased for wood. This one works best for wood. You can use pellets, pine cones, pine straw. The traditional twig stove elements work really well in here. That's the way I designed it. And to do that, I had to change up some airflow. But one of the challenges with cooking over a stove is working with the heat. You've got a variable with your building a fire, you've got a fire, then you've got a variable with what you're trying to cook, and then the variation of when that fire's dying, when it's coming up. When you're cooking over open flame and you're cooking over coals, they're two different heat profiles. So what I did is I made a back plane with a grill. And this is also an oven and a frying pan here too. But now we have variability that we can cook actually over an open fire now. Because the number one complaint that I got from customers was that when I get up in the morning, I want a fire and coffee. And with your stove right now, I can have a fire and I have to wait till it burns down for me to have my coffee. This stove, you can put your coffee pot up here, you can have a nice fire going that's warm, and you have them both at the same time.
I have my coffee pot here. Let's put it on there and see how well it fits on there. This is a larger, so this is the GSI. You all know I use the crap out of this, and look at that. Look, that's a perfect fit.
Yep. So we got 6.4 inches this way, 7 inches this way, so a little over 42 square inches of cooking area. And when the flames are challenging and really high and hot, you can go ahead and put this pan on, and that'll beat a lot of the heat down, so you can fry with this. And at the same time, when it's over coals, this is now an oven top, and so you can bake in this. And when it's over coals, you can put it down over down box onto
cool.
the top of the stove. So because that's my biggest challenge with using other people's stoves sometimes is it's easy to knock stuff off of. So I wanted it, especially when you're trying to flip a burger or you jam something. So I wanted something that
I love the redesign on this plate too.
Yeah, I think
that is cool.
Yeah, that did a really nice job for us, because when you transition to try and cook over fire, the temperatures are completely different. You have to deal. In fact, this stove, the grill that you have for the bigger stove, this stove melts it. It turns it orange.
Is it because it's such a small chamber, such a high output?
Yeah, what I did, I was thinking it was somewhat of a linear relationship with, if you take something and make it smaller and, okay, smaller fuel load, therefore smaller BTUs, da-da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah. It's
not that way. Because you start out with a base capability at some, of some area or cubic volume. And then from there, there's a multiple on that. So it's not just, half the size is going to be half the heat. No, not at all. You have a concentration factor that's going on. This bugger gets hot. But again, with the elevated cooking surfaces, there's a way to use that for us to advantage. So I'm really excited about this.
So tell the folks about the... So I like to use the Kelly kettle because it is what we call, a storm kettle. And a really cool thing, because if you use wood stoves, any other type of like a hobo style stove, when you're using that and the wind's blowing, sometimes they will feed your stove. It will help feed your stove, or sometimes it'll put your burner out. So tell them a little bit about how this stove actually works well in the wind and why it works so well.
Right, so if we pull these air panels off, so this stove is designed to work as a single wall redundant. So like for fast things where, like, let's say you want to put down for lunch and you really want to get cooking as fast as you can, assemble the stove in single wall mode. Single wall mode will get you ignited faster and will get you higher peak temperatures. The downside is it will generate more smoke. It'll burn through your wood faster. The upside is it'll cool down faster.
Yeah, exactly.
I think
it would for sure.
So when you run in double wall mode, you go ahead and you knock down that heavy high heat spike and prolong it out, and your burn time is much longer. The smoke is much less, and it's much more efficient in the long run. But the air intake for this stove is actually underneath. So if I look at this side panel, as an illustration.
I'll bring the camera in. Let me bring it in for you a little bit.
So basically the air is going in through there, and it's doing that on all four sides. So it's protected from direct wind coming in. It's shielded by this, and that goes ahead and gives it the great wind resistance that it has. I have a video out there, you may have seen it, where I actually put a fan here and blow on it. I put it on high. I used to have an Anna monitor, my dog ate it, but I don't know how high.
It happens.
Yeah, I don't know how high it was, but anywhere you put it, except here, this drop front isn't a good place to put the wind in. So whenever you're using it in a high wind environment, this needs to be away. But the purpose of the drop front is to make the fire more visible, and also to add turbulence and actually excite our fire.
And you can feed it really well if you're cooking on here. You can just feed it. That's been my experience.
Yep. And I actually have run. I think I may have shared it with you. I actually started a fire in the rain just so that I set to try it to see what I could do. And what I did was, basically I sized this so, just like you said, you can feed material into it if you're cooking straight up off the top, and it's proper for the exhaust that it needs for a slow running fire. But that fits right over it, and so when the rainstorm comes, you can actually put this on it and go where you got to go to get out of shelter or whatever. And this will keep the coals hot, and this will actually keep a fire going.
Oh, crazy. That's crazy.
So, because, when, I kayak camp, and when you're out there, you can't always predict what the weather's going to be, and if you're by yourself, you got to, things got to make do.
Oh, yeah.
So that was part of the design, was that I wanted this one stove to actually be a campfire replacement, because I think that's really hard to do. And you really, when you want to be a campfire replacement, you have to think about one piece of wood. How can you get the most fire and heat out of one piece of wood? And that's what this design is all optimized to do. It's how little of wood can you get by to cook with to get a relaxing fire for a long burn time. This stove, the longest fire we've had in this stove so far was 3 hours and 48 minutes. that's pretty good for a little bitty stove, and it used 6 pounds of wood for that 3 hours and 48 minutes. And it was a very attractive fire. We're going to show you a trick tonight that this thing's got that makes the fire look really cool.
And he's going to show me. So this is going to be 2 separate videos because I want this to be standalone, because I think that people really need to see this. And I think that also a lot of times when people see a camping adventure, they're like, oh great, I'm not gonna watch all of this video. And I think this deserves justice to be seen. And that way I can share also this in Stoveaholic, so my fellow stove maniacs can see it as well. So what I'm interested in doing is I'm not gonna be using a pot tonight, or a pan tonight, and I'm making tacos. So that's going to be interesting, and he's welcoming the challenge. So you know me, I like to test the stove like the absolute best that I can. And I think a bird just fell behind me or something. But anyway, we're going to bring a lot to. Is there anything you want to mention about this before we cut this side of it?
Not that I can think of, other than
these aren't pellets. You may notice that.
That's right.
So
I changed up the airflow to work better with wood than the other one, but it still works well with pellets. Pellets are still a very nice thing to carry and use under certain conditions. But the wood it seems to be, that's what everyone really wanted it to be able to run well on. And so I spent a lot of time working with the airflow, and it works really, really well on wood. A typical thing for me to cook, if talking about pellets or wood, for me to cook lunch, I use 1 cup of wood. So I'll cook 2 pork chops, and then I'll do a cobbler for dessert on 1 cup of wood or pellets.
Cobbler.
So it's pretty
so good.
Pretty efficient.
That's so good. All right, everyone. Well, thanks for watching this look at the BrightFire. This is one. He actually brought more than 1 stove, so we're going to be using these stoves, of course, in the other video while we're going to be doing some fishing and some camping and just hanging out and enjoying these stoves, because I want to run them through the test on how I camp, on how we normally camp, because I think that's important to a lot of people. Now, obviously, the community that he is primarily kind of more serving would be people who are kayaking and boating and stuff like that. But when we talked before about bringing a stove down to this size, I think this kind of opens the doors to make this stove pretty universal for just camping outdoors recreation. I mean, it's more of a recreational stove now. It's not just in your little, your little genre of kayaking or boating. This is now, I mean, we're camping, so we're car camping. 4 pounds may not be something you want to take with you backpacking, but if you're going for a mile and you're not taking a bunch of stuff, you might. That's totally up to you. If you're not a wimp. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. All right. Well, we'll see you guys. We're gonna test this out. So if you're interested in watching this, check out our next video. See ya.